Quand il mourut, sa vue n'avait pas baissé, sa vitalité n'avait pas diminué. Josué, fils de Nun, était rempli de l'esprit de sagesse parce que Moïse lui avait imposé les mains. Parole du Seigneur.
A reading from the book of Deuteronomy. The Lord said to Moses, "This is the land of which I swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, saying, I will give it to your descendants. I have let you see it with your eyes, but you shall not go over there." So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, according to the word of the Lord. Moses was 120 years old when he died. His eye was not dim, nor his natural force abated. Joshua, the son of Nun, was full of the spirit of wisdom, for Moses had laid his hands upon him. So the sons of Israel obeyed him, and did as the Lord had commanded Moses. The word of the Lord.
Lesung aus dem Buch Deuteronomium. Der Herr sprach zu Mose: Das ist das Land, das ich Abraham, Isaak und Jakob versprochen habe, mit dem Schwur: Deinen Nachkommen werde ich es geben. Ich habe es dich mit deinen Augen schauen lassen. Hinüberziehen wirst du nicht. Danach starb Mose, der Knecht des Herrn, dort in Moab, wie es der Herr bestimmt hatte. Mose war 120 Jahre alt, als er starb. Sein Auge war noch nicht getrübt, seine Frische war noch nicht geschwunden. Josua, der Sohn Nuns, war vom Geist der Weisheit erfüllt, denn Mose hatte ihm die Hände aufgelegt. Wort des lebendigen Gottes. Dank sei Gott.
Lectura del libro del Deuteronomio. El Señor dijo a Moisés: Esta es la tierra que juré a Abraham, a Isaac y a Jacob, diciendo: La daré a tu descendencia. Yo te permito verla con tus propios ojos, pero tú no entrarás en ella. Moisés, el servidor de Dios, murió allí, en la tierra de Moab, conforme a lo dispuesto por el Señor. Moisés tenía 120 años cuando murió, pero ni sus ojos se habían debilitado ni su vigor había disminuido. Josué, hijo de Nun, estaba lleno del espíritu de sabiduría, porque Moisés había impuesto sus manos sobre él. Palabra de Dios.
Leitura do livro de Deuteronômio. E o Senhor disse a Moisés: Esta é a terra da qual jurei a Abraão, Isaque e Jacó. Eu a darei à tua descendência. Tu a viste com teus próprios olhos, mas nela não entrarás. E Moisés, o servo do Senhor, morreu ali, na terra de Moabe, conforme o Senhor havia dito. Ao morrer, Moisés tinha 120 anos. Sua vista não tinha enfraquecido, nem seu vigor se tinha esmorecido. E Josué, filho de Num, ficou cheio do espírito de sabedoria, pois Moisés lhe tinha imposto as mãos. Palavra do Senhor.
قراءة من سفر تثنية الاشتراع. قال الرب لموسى: هذه هي الأرض التي أقسمت لإبراهيم وإسحاق ويعقوب قائلا: لنسلك أعطيها. قد أريتك إياها بعينيك، ولكنك إلى هناك لا تعبر. فمات هناك موسى عبد الرب في أرض مؤاب بأمر الرب. وكان موسى ابن 120 سنة حين مات، ولم يكل بصره ولم تذهب نضرته. أما يشوع بن نون فملئ روح حكمة، لأن موسى وضع عليه يديه. كلام الرب.
Czytanie z Księgi Powtórzonego Prawa. Rzekł Pan do Mojżesza: oto kraj, który poprzysiągłem Abrahamowi, Izaakowi i Jakubowi tymi słowami. Dam go Twemu potomstwu. Dałem Ci go zobaczyć własnymi oczami, lecz tam nie wejdziesz. Umarł Mojżesz, sługa Pański, i pochowano go w dolinie krainy Moabu. W chwili śmierci Mojżesz miał 120 lat, a wzrok jego nie był przyćmiony i siły go nie opuściły. Izraelici opłakiwali Mojżesza na stepach Moabu przez 30 dni. Jozue, syn Nuna, pełen był ducha mądrości, gdyż Mojżesz włożył na niego ręce. Oto Słowo Boże.
Cari fratelli e sorelle,
Dear brothers and sisters, good morning.
nella Bibbia il racconto della morte del vecchio Mosè
In the Bible, the account of the death of the elderly Moses is preceded by his spiritual testament, called the Song of
questo
Moses.
cantico è in primo luogo una bellissima confessione di fede.
This canticle is first and foremost a beautiful confession of faith, and it goes like
Voglio
this.
proclamare il nome del Signore.
For I will proclaim the name of the Lord.
Egli è la
Ascribe
roccia,
greatness to our God,
perfette le sue
the
opere,
rock. His work is
giustizia
perfect,
tutte le sue vie.
for all his ways are
È un
justice.
Dio fedele,
A
senza
God of
malizia.
faithfulness and without
Egli è
iniquity.
giusto e retto.
Just and right is he.
Ma è anche memoria della storia vissuta con Dio.
But it is also the memory of the history lived with God, of the adventures of the people formed from faith in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And then Moses also remembers the bitterness and disappointments of God himself.
His
His faithfulness continually put to the test, by the infidelities of his people. God is faithful, and the response of his people is unfaithfulness. It's almost as if the people wanted to put God's faithfulness to the test, and God remains faithful and near to his people. This is the heart of the Song of Moses, God's faithfulness which accompanies us throughout our lives. When Moses pronounces this confession of faith, he is on the threshold of the promised land and also on his departure from life. He was 120 years old, but his eye was not dim. This ability to see, like the elderly have that ability to see symbolically even. They know how to see the things with layers of meaning, the root of things. The vitality of his gaze is a precious gift. It enables him to pass on the legacy of his long experience of life and faith with the necessary clarity. Moses saw history and transmitted it. The elderly saw history, lived history, and transmitted it. An old age that is granted this clarity is a precious gift for the generation that is to follow. Listening personally and directly to the story of lived faith, with all its highs and lows, is irreplaceable. Reading about it in books, watching it in films, consulting it on the internet, however useful it may be, will never be the same thing. This transmission, which is the true and proper tradition, concrete, from the elderly to the young, this is sorely lacking today, an absence that continues to grow for the new generations, because this new civilization, the civilization of today, has the idea that are part of the throwaway culture. They are just to be discarded. There is a tone and style of communication, the direct person-to-person storytelling, that no other medium can replace. An older person who has lived a long time and receives the gift of a lucid and passionate testimony of his history is an irreplaceable blessing. Are we capable of recognizing and honoring this gift? Does the transmission of faith and the meaning of life follow this path today? I can give one of my own personal stories here. Hatred, anger, and war. I learned this from my grandfather, who in 1914 was in Piave. He transmitted this anger towards war to me because he told me about the sufferings of war. And this is something you don't learn in books. You learn it like this, person to person, from grandparents to grandchildren, and this is irreplaceable. The transmission of the experience of life from grandparents to grandchildren. But today, unfortunately, is lacking. And we just think grandparents are just to be tossed aside. They are a valued member of the people. Young people must listen to their grandparents. Our culture, which is so politically correct, this path seems to be hindered in many ways, in the family, in society, in the Christian community itself. Some even propose abolishing the teaching of history as superfluous information about worlds that are no longer relevant, which take resources away from knowledge of the present. It's like if we were born yesterday. The transmission of faith, on the other hand, often lacks the passion of a lived history. Transmitting the faith I'm not saying things blah, blah, blah. You have to recount your own experience. And so, how can it draw people to choose love forever, fidelity to the given word, perseverance and dedication, compassion for wounded and disheartened faces? Of course, the stories of life must be transformed into testimony, and the testimony must be faithful. An ideology that bends history to its own schemes is certainly not faithful. Propaganda that adapts history to promote its own group is not faithful. It is not faithful to turn history into a tribunal in which the past is condemned and any future is discouraged. To be faithful is to recount the story, to tell the story by one who has actually lived it. That's why we must listen to the elderly, to our grandparents.